like to take this space to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I personally deem very expensive, their time. Man, every one of us have 24 hours. What we do with that 24 hours will tell much about you. We have to learn how to respect, honor, and love her. And she will, as they say, recompense to us as we understand the value of time. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful created. It created the individual before us. And so we want to thank the individual that is here. Miroslav, thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. And I want you guys to pay attention, listen, and learn so that we can become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. I invite you all to this podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Ken. Good being here.
Excellent. I always ask people this question, which I mentioned to you earlier on, is how do we serve mankind? And there's a reason why I asked that, because I want those listeners, those folks that are listening to this podcast will realize that it's bigger than just ourselves. We have two journeys, I believe. I believe we have the independent journey, and I believe we also have, just as important, that interdependent journey. And so the question is, how do you serve mankind?
By speaking and listening. If I was to distill it into two things, I think one thing that I kind of found in my own journey was expressing what really mattered and what was in my heart was quite a journey. It took me a long time to get to the point of like, okay, I'm willing to risk who I know myself to be to allow this to come through. And after some time, people started asking me like, hey, can you teach me to do that? And it was never a service. I saw myself working before I started this path. It's definitely one that called out to me after I'd been walking the path. It's like, I think for a long time I was asking myself, what's my purpose? And then when enough people started asking me to teach them in this particular way, it's like, okay, there's a gift that life wants to offer through me in the doing of this. And I find speaking is only as valuable as deeply as we're going to listen. I've had sometimes people say to me, Miroslav, you call yourself a speaker trainer, but you also teach the audience to listen. And I think this is just as important. Like for me, Ken, there's no point speaking unless people are really listening. And for us to each other, like in this conversation with our loved ones, with our children, I think it's a real question of how do we listen more deeply as well.
Guys, I love it. I love when people can, if you will, articulate exactly what that is. And that is powerful as far as how he had set it up. One of the things that we do here in Threads of Enlightenment is go back. We want to get to know you through your journey, one that has been placed in this planet, and you have been taken home to mom and dad. Mom and dad are strangers. Siblings are strangers. And now in this particular arena of the family, you and your strange folks around you are going to what you call mom and dad. They're going to impart some data into your life, and you're going to learn a few things while you're there. What was your family unit like?
So early on, it was probably challenging in that we were from Yugoslavia. And when I was 5, the war broke out in Yugoslavia. So there was a lot of uncertainty. We ended up being refugees first into Serbia and then from Serbia to Australia as well. So a lot of unpredictability, fear, not knowing what's going to happen, feeling like the odd ones out, not speaking the language. The list kind of goes on and on and on. A lot of displacement. Not that my parents tried to teach me this, but I think because of the amount of fear in the family unit, I probably just, absolved a lot of that fear because there was so much uncertainty that we were living inside of. And coming to get to know that has been quite a journey and understanding how hard it was for them as well. And then I feel some of these values just, they come through the ancestral pipeline. Like I think back to my grandfather, even like 10 or 15 years after the war, he would still keep like 20 kilo sacks of sugar and flour and stuff like that in his garage. And it was like a massive, thing of them. And I was like, yeah. I can see this is that relationship, like just in case something happens, we want to be ready. We want to know that there's food available, that at least we can make bread. And I see some of those values, came into my life as well. It's like, I can feel I've had to work for a lot of layers around the fear and the scarcity of, what if there isn't enough? And also recognizing it's like, well, that time isn't right now.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I love to ask these questions is that we get a chance to pinpoint some things that beliefs, if you will, that we began to form as young individuals that causes certain perceptions. And I try to tell you these perceptions now are how we're going to be guided, how we're going to have conversations with others, how we're going to learn to trust, honor. All of those things will come from those little things that we pick up from whether it's grandparents, parents, friends, whatever. But they do accumulate, if you will, into our life and begin to form us. So here you are, this young man, um, seeing all of this stuff and being in that mix. You mentioned some of the things that you are beginning to identify. How did you relate to others outside of the family, like friends and stuff like that, knowing that some of those things are there in relationships? How did you start developing your relationships?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, I think with close friends, I was fine. And because we came to Australia as refugees, I had a lot of cousins I grew up with, which could obviously speak the language. It was kind of like extended family. But I found the challenges were more so with like the extended social circles, other friends at school that didn't know me, and
Yeah,
you know, being around sporting clubs and kind of recognizing that I just went really, really mute. Like I was fine when people knew me and when I was comfortable in a situation, but any kind of extension from that, I was really quiet. I was very quiet at school. Every time the report cards came around, it was like, how do we get Miroslav to speak? I think people were concerned about, my social skills because I would never volunteer to offer my voice unless I was specifically asked. And this probably went with me, not just in my childhood. I mean, that probably stuck. It's still here to some capacity, I've
yeah,
been doing work on these things for like over a decade and a half now, and it's still there in some ways. Like when I speak my mother tongue Serbian, I still stutter, and that still affects me in social situations, especially when I'm speaking primarily Serbian. In English, I've worked for a lot of it. Like I've really developed who I am as a person thanks
yeah,
to all of this work. But yeah, the early days were very hard. A lot of stuttering, a lot of people just thinking I was mute, a lot of loneliness. Like, yeah. There's one little story that comes to mind, and it's a story that happened many times. And this is even like in my early to late teens, just standing like with a group of people, and we'd be chatting, and I probably wouldn't be chatting because I'd be awkward and uncomfortable, and I would just have like the two people next to me quite often just kind of edge me out, and I'd
yeah,
end up being in the circle anymore, and then feeling really awkward and being like having to walk around and just slide into a different part of the circle and just pretend it didn't happen, and also like feeling
yeah,
completely unable to express myself, just being like, this is shit and I don't know what to do about it, just feeling stuck inside my own skin.
yeah. I tell people that the quote unquote trauma becomes the way by which we serve. It becomes, and I just love the fact that how beautiful we are and how wise each individual is. That we will take this trauma that we suffered as young ones, and as an adult going through the journey, we're going to take this now that we were hurt and was painful to us as we are moving through life, and take it now and use it to our benefit to help each other. I think the wisdom of the journey and being able to convert this trauma into a superpower is absolutely one of the most beautiful things that an individual, if you will, get a chance to experience in their life. Because I look at mine and I look back at it and I'm like, dang, man, I remember. And now I'm able to reach up and grab someone and walk them through. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, but I got it from it, but I'll ask you anyway. When you were pulling back, was it more so, and you said you lean towards it, fearfulness, or when you pulled back, did you become an observer of the conversation? Were you looking at how others were acting, or you were just governed by the fearfulness and being awkward, if you will. And as you said, you were moving around different areas. Did you become an observer at any time, or were you just pulling out of fear, not to be seen in a different way?
I think this question has two answers. So my experience was very much one of awkwardness and fear, and I had no control over it. It's like the conversation happening in my head with my own self-criticism was allowed that, and I didn't even know it. Like, if someone asked me, "Are you being self-critical?" No, I'm not being self-critical. It's like I was so deeply stuck inside my own system, that was just normal to me. Like I wasn't even aware of how strong the voice of criticism was. It,
Yeah.
it was it wasn't even a voice, it was just the emotion of it. Like the emotion was overbearing. But also, like after having come to the point I have now, I found that I have quite an acute ability. Ability isn't even the right word. Like I'm very acute when it comes to social dynamics and
Mm-hmm.
communication, where I'm aware of a lot of subtleties most people aren't. And I can't explain that because I didn't sit here, writing a PhD about body language. I can just pick up on some subtleties that are oblivious to most people. And I think maybe that time spent in quietness and solitude
Yeah.
just allowed my system to develop a capacity to be more with smaller details of life.
Yeah, I always wonder because I remember, and again, from interviewing people, I get to hear all the different response to that. And it's something to be able to figure it out and see when we look back in retrospect, we get some really keen, powerful tools that we were able to utilize later on in our life from those awkward situations. And like I said, I personally think I get a chance from listening to everyone's story to see the brilliance of you guys, how we take uncomfortable situations, and even within that, we are learning, we're observing, we're becoming wise, but we don't see it until much later. Then it starts to come together, and then you're like, I kind of see some of those things there. So here you are, you're moving in life, um, you're heading towards college. You're looking towards college again, heading into your beginnings, if you will. But I tell people the beginnings is the minute we hit the womb. Even before that, you alluded to ancestral stuff that we have also that we carry around. So we've been carrying around some stuff for a long time. So you're heading into that direction. With all of this unease and not sure. Everyone is talking about college and all those type of conversation. Where did you go? Did you go to college or did you branch out somewhere else?
No, no. So there was many arguments here I had with my parents, and they were like, "Go to college, study anything you want, just finish something." And in the end, what I chose to study was photography. I was like, it's the one thing I feel passionate enough about to want to go and study. I would say on my graduation, I was a bit of I want to say brat. Like I remember giving the diploma to my mother, and I feel horrible about this now, but at the time I remember giving it to her and saying, "Here, this is for you." And it was very much a sense of like, "You've asked me to do this, so I've done it for you." And I feel it was a bit selfish and self-centered of me
Yeah.
because I received so much from that, and maybe I didn't know it at the time, but I can definitely see how my life path was paved as a result of that. So
Yeah.
after studying photography, I went and I worked as a photographer. I was a portrait photographer full time for maybe 2 or 3 years. And you see a lot of people and you connect with a lot of people in that time. And one thing I found, like the moment that I stopped being a portrait photographer was when I recognized that I didn't love photography. I loved people. And the camera was what I needed to come out of my shell because I was
Yeah.
so shy and quiet and introverted. Like the camera was there to support me to connect with people, but it's like it was a barrier between us. And when I realized that, I was like, I don't really care about photography. What I care about is people. And how can I just be more deeply in the connection with people?
When you saw that, as you said, you saw it and you recognized that. How did that switch happen? Because again, this guy back in the day, if you will, who would never do that. What What was it? What was that catalyst, if you will, that thing that made you go boom and you did it? Because I tell people that individual is what we call the subconscious individual. And once he makes a decision, I believe when he makes a decision, the whole apparatus of the universe began to open up to make that a possibility. I believe that individual also, there's a knowing, even though he doesn't know, but there's a knowing that this is the route. It's not clear, but he knows it and begins to excel in it to a degree. What was it that you saw that did that?
The, there's almost two things. One of them was this awakening moment where I knew I had
Mm-hmm.
to speak and to teach, but I feel like that came later. I feel earlier on there was a very deep feeling of wanting to live a life of purpose and not knowing specifically what my purpose is, but really being keen on, like, I had a really good friend that was a photographer, and he was networking all the time. He was doing complimentary shoots all the time. He was going and meeting photographers and offering to assist them for free and to get paid, and he was building all these relationships. And I just looked at myself and I'm like, I want that, but I don't care. Like, I do not care about photography that much. But I'm like, the fire that he's got for photography, I want to find where my version is of that. And I think, like, seeing it in him helped me realize, firstly, that it's not in photography, and also had me start asking, oh,
Yeah, I can still see you.
okay, my screen just went blank for a moment. Yeah, it had me start asking, where is this for me? Like, where do I feel this sense of fire and passion? And some of it was like what they say, the writing is in the walls. I remember one of the team said to me one day, Miroslav, we always create the best, like, the sales we get when you're shooting
Yeah.
it's like they're huge, and we haven't really had those kind of sales since you've been here. And I remember thinking to myself, and saying to that woman as well, I'm like, but I'm not even the best photographer in here. And she's like, yeah, but it's not about the photographer. She's like, that person and that person definitely take better pictures than you, but it's about the depth of connection you create with people that you then capture in their images. And she's like,
Right.
that depth of connection that you're creating, that's hard to teach. And I think as I started listening, I can't say it was just one moment, Ken. It was like numerous moments like this. I
Yeah.
was like, my time is really with people, and I want to spend time getting to know people more and not hiding behind the camera. And
Yeah.
at the same time, I'd also started meditation, and I had my teacher and my friends asking me to teach them to meditate.
Mhm.
And that was very scary, but I was like, this just feels like the thing I need to turn towards. It's like, if I want to be closer to people, like, here's the doorway that's opening up.
Yeah. Meditation, it saved my life. I was a wreck. I was a mess when I had my personal. I was going through my stuff, and I remember meditation. And I was in the corporate world at the time, and director of this of an HMO in marketing, and my staff is there, and then all of this stuff, the responsibility was, and the kids. I was a single dad with four boys at the time. I mean, my world was like, and I discovered meditation, and
Mm.
meditation helped me manage all of that. In my meditation was where I got my strength. I got, because, and I tell people, because I started recognizing, it took me some time because my mind, you know how it is when you're first starting. Now 5 minutes was talking about 5 minutes. 30 seconds was 30 seconds was hard, man. And I can do an hour and change when I choose to do that without without any hesitation, and it feels like it's just been a 5 minute kind of thing. But it saved my life in this fashion. It allowed me, and I tell people, it is one of the most powerful tools that man has known. It allowed me to begin to take control of my thoughts. I began to pick which ones I wanted to give permission to manifest. Those are the things I started learning, and I remember that that space right there, I call people that are there and learning creators, because now we are going to become designers, whereby we are going to start to disconnect from the default programming that we've been told from day one, from our beliefs and all this stuff. But that point there, when you introduce meditation into your life, what did you begin to see about you, and what other tools did you bring in to assist you to navigate from that point A individual into this new individual that you're trying to create and bring to the forefront? What other tools did you started bringing into your life to assist you?
One of the tools that very naturally showed up was authenticity. And I remember being in a relationship at the time where I was like this has to come to an end. And a part of me not wanting it, but also knowing that whatever I was connecting to inside myself, it
Yeah,
was saying it's time for this to come to an end. And at the same time, like when you say tools, I remember this very significant moment. I was at a workshop and everyone was going in a circle and speaking. It was like the closing circle of the workshop. And I was sitting somewhere in the middle and it came to me to share. And I remember distinctively saying, like, no, I don't want to share right now.
yeah,
There is so much fear happening inside me that I'm preferring to just be with the fear and savor this
yeah,
experience of fear, then blurt it out and be done with it. I'm like, I'm just going to sit and enjoy it for as long as possible before I share. And that was a defining moment for me. Like, I realized that the fear couldn't hold me back, and that without the story, the fear as a sensation, when I stopped calling it fear, was quite a pleasurable experience in my body. And that kind of became, I didn't know it at the time, but it really became a tool that I lent into and kept utilizing for the rest of my life since then. And I found whenever I allowed myself to digest the fear, magic would happen, because it usually meant doing or saying something I'd never said before in my life. So it was like opening up the algorithm to life and just being a witness to the magic and the mystery that life is.
yeah. I hope you guys are listening, um, because that is absolutely it right there. I mean, we could hang up the phone and call it a day. Right there is what we're talking about. And all of you again that are listening to this conversation, I'm so glad that he's here, because as I've said to you 100 times, they're here because you have a need. And all of you that are listening, and have, one of the advice that I give my listeners here at the podcast is to learn how to become a hearer of the conversation, because as you transition from listening and you become a hearer, it's that subconscious individual that will say stuff like, I don't want to do that. I want to move forward. We want you to hear with him, because once he hears it, it's a reality. Everything will be done. As I said to you, the universe and you will conspire to bring it to pass. It is one of the most powerful things you'll ever see in your life once you make that decision. So here you are. We've all been into those interesting relationships, if you will. They're there to help us grow. As you are looking into your life and you're there, you're seeing all of these things, because I want to get to how did you become an author, uh, TEDs, all of that stuff. I want them to get to know you and to see your progression as you're moving through life, and you are co-creating, if you will, as you are co-creating with the universe and yourself to bring this new you in life. Talk to us about some of those challenges, because we have challenges that will come up, that we need to be aware of, because I tell people no journey is a linear thing. It is all over the place. Talk to us about some of those challenges as you begin to move forward, about you learning and incorporating things. What were some of those things that keep popping up that you noticed that you needed to um, investigate a little deeper?
Yeah, so one of the challenges was definitely financial. I went through probably 10 years of pretty intense financial struggle. Yeah, there was times I lived on very, very little money. And a part of me was pretty stubborn, and I don't recommend this for anyone else, but it was my journey. It's like I want to be of service, I want to live my purpose, and I don't want to work a random job. Like climbing the corporate ladder, I just knew was not for me. Like whatever wants to come through me, I need to be in service to that. and it meant sacrificing a lot. Like, for 10 years, it's like I didn't go back to my homeland. Sorry, maybe like once or twice I did, but I think once was because my grandfather passed away and my parents sent me as they would, they couldn't make it to the funeral. So it's like I didn't have a lot of the options and choices I would have had if I'd just gone after money. And I feel the second thing that was challenging, Ken, is I had people say this to me countless times: Miroslav, you're going to be a speaker and you're going to be globally famous. I had a guy at a Mind Body Spirit festival. He was a stage psychic. Usually he's a stage psychic and medium. He's telling people about their relatives that have passed over. He saw me standing at the back of the room. I didn't put my question up, didn't have a question for him. He goes to me, "You're going to be massive. I'm seeing you standing in front of the Star Spangled Banner. You're going to have a huge career in the States. You're going to be famous all over the world, but you have to take care of what's happening in here." He was pointing to his head when he said it. I was in a pretty deep depression at the time. And I'd had like not just him, but I had random people that would come up to me and say things like this. At one point, I remember this guy used to be a bouncer at a club that we used to go to. Years and years later, he's never commented on any of my stuff on social media, but he just sends me a message in private and goes like, "Hey, I've had some hard times, and your content, the stuff you've posted on social media, really supported me through that. Can we catch up?" And we caught up, and he told me about a lot of hardship he'd been through, a lot of drugs he'd been through, all the kind of bad stuff he'd been involved in. And he told me, he's like, "On some of the drug binges I've been on, I've seen your career and the success you're going to make in your life." And he's telling me this while I'm living off like $100 a week, not knowing how I'm going to pay rent next month. So it was this sense of like, I know this thing is coming at some stage, and I know that this is what I need to be doing, but also like, fuck, give me. It's like I don't need signs. Like I just need, I need a paycheck, basically. Yeah,
Isn't it funny how I tell people, I try to educate people because it was like that for me. When we start the journey, as you mentioned, we have certain expectations in our mind and how it should be. And when those expectations are not met, we start getting all kinds of frustration. Am I doing the right thing? All this kind of stuff. And I tell them, leaving the job, going into your gift, how you're going to now begin to live from, can only be done by what in religion is called faith. There's no other way. You had your life. Is there? And you've talked to many people, and you've guided many. Is there any other way that you have seen from your conversation? It takes a degree of faith to actually believe what you believe is what you believe. It takes some kind of courage.
Yeah, amen. I think you said that well. It does take faith. It takes resilience. Sometimes I think to myself, if present day Miroslav could speak to that Miroslav, he would probably say to him, "It's going to happen, but it's going to take a lot longer than you think."
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he could have relaxed into that. It's like, okay, we're on a 10-year journey, not a 2-year journey, I think it's fate, but here's the other thing I think, Ken. I think it's about taking the steps we can take. And what I mean by that is like, I knew what I was passionate about. Like my skill and my genius is really connection and doing that many to one. So staging from the stage, training, facilitation, workshops, and I've really poured myself heavily into that. And even when I had those periods where I was stuck financially, I was like, you know what? The money is not the main driver for me here. Developing this skill set this is what I love doing. This is what I would do even if I wasn't getting paid for it. So what I would do is I would run retreats where people could pay $100 to register. I would invite them to bring some food along. We'd all cook together. And then I would say, they would know this before they come, at the end, you pay whatever else you want. Like $100 would basically cover my basic expenses. So we all bring food and cook together. It becomes a communal experience. Some people love that more than the retreat itself. And then at the end, I just make whatever they feel to give as an extra for the experience they had. And what that meant for me is countless days and days and days. I don't know how much that would have accumulated to, but I did a lot of those retreats. of just being in there, harnessing my gifts, my skill sets, the thing that's really what's allowed me to be
Yeah.
successful as a result of that. It's like I was prepared to do it regardless of what success looked like. Like the
Yeah.
intoxication was being in life itself.
Yeah. People think it's easy. I tell them the personal development, self-development is not for weak people. Not at all. Because you have to go to some dark places within the self, not outside dealing with anyone else at all. You have to go into the dark places, the places that people hide from by alcohol, drugs, and all the other things that we use, relationships, everything, all of that type stuff we use to hide from getting into that place. Not being able to have, as you said, the financial thing will make you kind of get in there and start digging into some of those places. All of these different things are designed to assist you to become even more fine-tuned in your craft, your belief, your mindset, all of these things. And so I want to encourage you guys, come out, step out, take the the step. It takes courage. I have someone here. We're going to provide everything for you to have access to him because you need to step out. Everyone, you're listening to his story, you're listening, interjecting some of mine. It was scary sometimes. None of us are going to sit here and say, we just made up this thing and then boom, we just arrived. We went into some dark places, man. That's why we were able to help. Miroslav is able to help because he's been through some hard places, some dark times. And those times is when we started relying and recruiting the creator that is in us, who it's really us. The body and the natural mind is not who you are. And as we begin to incorporate him and give him permission to take the reign, if you will, it's amazing what will happen to you. It's scary, but trust us, man. It's a wonderful ride. You'll be amazed how things come together. It really does. It's a synergy between you, the creator, the other energetic people that he will bring into your life and cause you to manifest your vision and your life. But it takes some courage. Here you are, man. You are learning all of these things. You're seeing, like I said, that financial piece is one of the last hindrance in the sense where it can, a lot of people I know give up right there. But when we hang on and we move through and we come out on the other side, never really out. You're just moving from phase to phase and learning more and more. So as you move through all of that and you're coming in, you're looking into your life and you're seeing now certain things. How did you begin to put your piece, your own spin, if you will, all the wisdom, the meditation, all the different things you're learning? How did you bring it into your space? Because we all do. We bring it into our space and we began to change it a little and we produce his books. We do the TED Talk. We do all these different things, blogs, whatever format that we utilize to bring out and express our own identity within our journey. When did you start noticing it come together, and how did you start to move in that direction and put it together?
So I remember those stories I told you, the people that used to tell me, you're a speaker, you need to get on stage. I remember this one point, a woman I was living with, who also happened to be psychic, said the same thing to me. She did a reading and she's like, you're a speaker, you need to get on stage. And I remember saying to her this exact thing, like you just said to me in a different way. I remember looking at her and saying, there's nothing I have to talk about. Like everything that I'm interested in has already been written in the great books and the great teachers have already said it before me. Like what could I possibly do on top of that? Like, it's all been done. And then I realized that most people aren't going to go looking into the books that fascinated me. They're not going to study these teachers in the same way. And what was valuable was not me rehashing all of that. It was about me telling the stories of how that wisdom has shown up and lived in my life. Like how those teachings of the ancients have shown up in contemporary life and how I've utilized, put it into practice and the results it's had in my life. That's where it gets really interesting. And this is like why at some point I just opted out of philosophical debates. I'm like, I don't really care. I care about how you're using this in your life, and I care about how it impacts your relationship to your family, to your work, to your community. That's where it really matters beyond, what faith or religion we are. And when I started sharing those stories, people started getting interested because, the way we do that is going to be so unique to all of us.
Hey guys, you listening? I keep telling you I got to stop when it's good stuff and make you aware of it because I want you to be understanding who is before you, been through some stuff, can help you, your friends, your family, those of you guys that are listening. He has books, and we're going to put those things so you can have access to them. Give them as gifts, man. We have good friends that are out there. We have family members that we want to see it happen. And you know how I feel about books. They are housed information, data that is there to free your soul from the perspective that you have been living and wrestling with for so long in your life, and you find yourself circular, can't figure out what to do. Those books, they have data in there that you need to prepare yourself to receive it. Just don't read a book and run around or whatever. Make sure that you put yourself in a state by which you can receive what is being offered by the audience, the author. And let me give you guys a title, give them the goosebumps. I love that title. Make sure that you guys get it, and we, again, give it as presents to folks. And so you guys can chat about how it's changing your life and making an impact in yourself, your family, and your neighborhood, friends, and so forth. So here you are, get all this stuff together, and you're doing it. So how did the TED Talk piece came together? How did that manifest?
That's actually a really good question. There's a bit of divine fate inside of that. A friend of mine had organized to do a TED Talk, and she'd paid someone to support her, like an agency basically, to support her in creating a proposal and all of that. And she'd decided that she didn't want to do it. And she called me and she said, Miroslav, I've done a bunch of, I think she said, like muscle testing or just like checking in with my intuition. And I thought about gifting this to a few people. And it just keeps coming up that you're the person I need to gift this to. And she was like, I've reached out to them. It's going to cost you X amount to get it transferred in your name. It still wasn't cheap, but it kind of felt like divine providence, Ken. Like when she called me, I was living in a room with a friend of mine. I couldn't afford to pay rent at the time, so I was just helping them with housework. I had one mattress on my floor. That was the only piece of furniture I had. Actually, the mattress wasn't even mine. They'd given that to me as well. So I basically had very, very bare essentials. And this just felt like a gift when it landed. And a part of me was also like so deeply grateful to her. But I can't even put words on this. It was like the magic of life just showed up through I don't know, through in between the waves.
Yeah. It's amazing how, I tell people all the time, I swear, I tell them, hurry up and get busy with your journey, because you'll get to see these little miracles, how things are put together, the synergy of things and the people coming in and making things happen on your behalf. And, you'll have people come as Miroslav, have people coming in and nudging him into his, what they see in him, and what they see and what it's basically what they know that he can offer them and others. And they'll say, hey, you be good at this. And sometimes you need to start paying attention. And one of the things that I always tell people, sometimes you do nothing. You just watch and things will happen for you. And it's part of the journey, man. It's just a part of it. But we get a chance to enjoy and stretch. I want to ask this. I ask this on just a few people once in a while when I sense something shifting. And I tell people the shifting comes to us not because it comes because it's time to grow. Complacency, I tell people, is one of the enemies of personal development and personal growth. When we become complacent and stagnant, if you've ever seen a natural realm where water is stagnant, you see all kinds of critters up in there. But we as individuals, and I tell people, when we have this disturbance, if you will, within our being, it's just to tell and remind us that there's more for us to do. We're looking at our world today. What is it that you feel that is sitting in the background? It's usually in the background. Sometimes when we're just quiet, it's there and it's been there for months and so forth. It's coming up to a crescendo, if you will. What is it, Miroslav, that you feel that you is in there, that you feel a shift, that you are looking to kind of like pivot and expand yourself? What is it you are sensing?
Yeah, that's. I love how you're asking this question, and I love how much expression there is in your hands as you're asking this question, Ken. It's very beautiful. For me, that thing that I'm looking to shift, but I think I'm just looking to accept and love it deeply. Is It's like a feeling of unsettledness inside me, and it's like a feeling of overwhelm that happens very often. And when the feeling is present, it's like I can't sit still or I can't relax, and I'm always looking to just be doing the next thing. And I can see it's not conducive. I'm like, I can be doing the next thing and not being overwhelmed and not having my heart rate up. And whatever this is, to bring it back where you started, it feels like something from childhood. It's like there's nothing that's happening in my life today that warrants this feeling. But I found that as long as this feeling is here, I'm never going to be truly happy. A long time ago, my prayer and what I kept wishing and hoping for was, it was like I was saying to God or the universe, just let me do the work that I'm here to do. Let me live and be of purpose. And I'll be happy when I can make money doing what I love. And then that happened. And that's kept happening. Like that's been my life for the last 4-ish years, consistently. Before that, the previous 10 was inconsistent. It's like there'd be moments of maybe great financial respite and then months of being like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. And since it's been consistent, I've kind of noticed it's like, this is the life I dreamed of, and I'm still not happy. And there's no further external success that's going to create that happiness for me. Like this feeling that's left, that's an internal job now. And my prayer isn't to do with the external. My prayer is now, just can I come into deeper appreciation with every moment just as it is? Can I love this moment the way it's showing up?
And that's awesome. Again, guys, and I want to thank Miroslav for coming here and spending, as I said, those precious commodity with us, is both his time and his journey and his insight, the wisdom, the knowledge, and all those things. And all of that is designed through his story to help you and I to be better at who we are and to be able to confront ourselves. We're going to provide every and all of his links. I want you guys to get into his space because he has some information that will change and assist you in changing your perspective, your direction. Once your perspective change, your belief is changed, the direction of your life is changed, your family is changed, everything changes as you begin to create and allow yourself to see into your world with different perspective. Will give you your freedom that you're seeking. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be fun and it's going to be interesting, and you're going to be talking to us at some point. So we want to afford you guys all of the data, the information, so that you can get into his space and be transformed, man, from where you're at to where you want to be. Miroslav, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
My pleasure, Ken. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. I